Welcome to the Connecting Mind and Spirit podcast, a podcast devoted to helping you understand and apply the teachings of A Course in Miracles. I am your host, Fiona Williams, author of the newly released book, Awakening Your Right Mind, Healing from Fear and Following Spirit with A Course in Miracles. The benefits of A Course in Miracles are experienced through application of its right-minded principles. Throughout this podcast series, I will explain specific topics and teachings from A Course in Miracles and guide you through meditative exercises, which will help you apply the teachings to your life. Thank you for being here, and let's get started.
Okay, so we are going to begin with the Course's True Prayer. The True Prayer is found in the Song of Prayer pamphlet, which goes along with the Course. And so if you're not familiar with the Song of Prayer, it is a time where we commune with our source and connect. And we are taught that should include true prayer into our daily work using the Course, because it is one way that we can expedite our enlightenment. And so it's an excellent way to connect with your source. So if you want, you're welcome to close your eyes and just kind of relax, and I will read the Song of Prayer for you, and it will just help us put ourselves in a right-minded state. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions, and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the child of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the minds which you created and which you love. And so in this prayer, we are being reminded that everything that we've held on to, all the painful memories, all the fears for the future, are really just illusions that we are using to block our awareness to the love of our source. And through true forgiveness, we're just undoing those blocks bit by bit, step by step. That's what we're doing. And so this is a really beautiful prayer that you can use to take some quiet time and connect with your source. As you will learn, remembering your oneness in God is foundational to true forgiveness, and I will be covering that for you. Okay? So if you have any questions or anything like that, please don't be shy to shout them out or put them in the chat. I will just want to make sure that I'm going at a pace that's helpful for you, as we only have an hour together. Okay, so the first beginning foundation of true prayer is that this world, this physical experience, is an illusion. It's a projection of our minds. And that can be a tough pill to swallow for many people when they first encounter the Course. But we're not asked to deny our experience here in this world. We're not asked to ignore it. We're actually asked to repurpose it. So we're asked instead to use it for the ego's purposes, which just keeps us stuck in the illusion. We're being asked to let the Holy Spirit use our challenges to help us wake up, which is a beautiful reframe of our experience here. And so Dr. Kenneth Wapnick, if you're familiar, the Course teacher, he said that every morning realize that here in this illusion, you are forgetting the ego and remembering God. That is your work here. And so that is what true forgiveness offers us, because in this world, which seems all-encompassing, it just seems to be everything we can see and all we can feel and all we can touch. And so we need help. We need help, and that's where the Holy Spirit, through our right mind, supports us in perceiving things correctly for us. You and me, through our ego minds, we don't know how to judge. We don't know how to perceive this world. We don't know how to perceive our challenges. We're mistaken. And so we need the Holy Spirit to truly perceive for us, which is a real gift. So what we're thinking of this is kind of like creating a new habit of thinking, that instead of approaching my challenges the old way, where I would try and rationalize them and understand them from an ego perspective, instead I'm being asked to gently hand them over to the Holy Spirit so the Holy Spirit can judge them for me. And so what's important to remember is that the Holy Spirit is your higher self. It's not something apart from you. It's actually fundamental to you. Okay? And so that can be really comforting, that the answer to my challenges and to my pain and my suffering is right there in my mind. It's the Holy Spirit, the higher self. And you can use a term that feels comfortable for you for that, for the Holy Spirit, higher self, if that works for you, whatever it might be. The important thing that you realize is that you are connecting with something that is God's answer to your pain, which is really, really beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to, just on the lines of this foundation of true forgiveness, is that we're forgiving because this world is illusory. We're not trying to rationalize pain and suffering or the actions of others or our own mistaken actions. What we're trying to do is we're actually just trying to go above the battleground. And there's a section in the course that's called Above the Battleground, which I highly recommend reading. But that's what we're being asked to do. So we don't want to get caught up in trying to justify this world. We want to rise above and just ask the Holy Spirit for help in perceiving it correctly. And honestly, that's where true freedom comes from, because then you don't get stuck in the battleground in your own judgments. Okay, so I'm just reading from the preface of the course. And it says, the world we see merely reflects our own internal frame of reference, the dominant ideas, wishes, and emotions in our minds. Projection makes perception. We look inside first, decide the kind of world we want to see, and then project that world outside, making it the truth as we see it. So we're all perceiving through our own perception. It's highly individualized. And so just continuing with this quote, we make the world true by our interpretations of what it is we are seeing. If we are using our own ego perception to justify our own mistakes, our anger, our impulses to attack, our lack of love in whatever form it may take. So if I'm using my ego perception, then I'm going to stay stuck in my suffering and in my pain. And I can't do that. That's not my way out. And so we will see a world of evil, destruction, malice, envy, and despair. That's what happens when we use our ego perception. Okay? All this we must learn to forgive, not because we are being good and charitable, but because what we are seeing isn't true. We have distorted the world by our twisted defenses and are therefore seeing what is not there. As we learn to recognize our perceptual errors, our perception is what was mistaken. We also learn to look past our misperceptions so we can forgive. Okay, so foundational to true forgiveness is that what I am seeing is a projection of thinking I separated from my source. So there's a ton of fear and guilt. And if I use my own ego perception to judge this world and judge my challenges, I like to say we just stay in the cycle of fear and it just repeats and repeats and we experience ourselves as stuck. And so we want to back it up. We want to back it up and go, Holy Spirit, this is actually what I like to say when I'm doing my true forgiveness. I don't know how to judge. So will you please judge it for me? It's one thing to ask the Holy Spirit. So we're not going, Holy Spirit, take this from me. We're saying, take this from me and judge it for me. Because I don't know how to judge. I need you. Okay, so it's not just take this from me, it's take this from me and judge it. Okay, so that's very, very important. Okay, so that's the first foundation to true forgiveness, is that this world is illusory. So it's an experience of your mind, and you want to reframe it as your classroom. So this world is my classroom. And when you reframe it as a classroom, I don't know about you, but it feels a lot less heavy to me. It's waking me up if I let it. Okay. And, just being vulnerable. Because I'm coming out of PTSD, and here and there I will have bouts of heightened anxiety. And that happened 2 weeks ago. I had it just heightened all of a sudden. And I knew that I just really had to dig deep into my true forgiveness work and ask for help. I was guided to a really beautiful meditation that I use daily to help me just release from the past and come and remember that I am safe. So I didn't look at this bout of anxiety as a step backwards. I actually saw it as an opportunity to up my game, to continue my true forgiveness work, to dig deep and let the Holy Spirit in. And it's been beautiful. The experiences, the dreams that I've had of healing, it's just beautiful. I know I'm being taken care of. So you want to look at your challenges and go, this is not meant to take me down. This is being shown so I can wake up. It's just a phase, right? So, and I always like to say, this too shall pass, but we just have to let it. I have to let this pass. And how do I do that? By stepping away with my own ego perception and asking the Holy Spirit actively, will you please judge this for me? Right? So this is our classroom. This is what we're being asked to do. Okay, so the next thing I want to mention about true forgiveness is that it puts you at the level of cause. We're taught in A Course in Miracles a lot about cause and effect. Okay, and so when we're in this world, and we have this, especially in the beginning stages before we become students of A Course in Miracles, we feel very much as victims of this world. We feel victimized of other people's behaviors. We feel victimized of our own thoughts. We feel victimized of the situations of this world, right? And so what's actually going on there is that we are thinking we're at the mercy of the effect of the world. The world, the physical experience, is an effect of a thought in the mind. So cause comes first. That is my mind. The effect comes after, right? And so this world being a projection is an effect of that tiny mad idea, thinking that I walked away from my source. And when I walk around thinking that I'm at the mercy of an effect, then I can definitely feel victimized. And so there's a beautiful section in chapter 2 of the Course where Jesus says, don't ask me to save you from fear. I can't do that. If you chose fear and you chose to believe it, I'm out of it. Like, you believed it, and so you're going to feel it. But what I can help you with is reminding you how powerful your mind is, that you can choose differently. And that is what A Course in Miracles is teaching us. It's highlighting that our minds are always creating. It's highlighting that we are the decision makers who have a choice in how we choose to think. Freedom from fear comes from that fundamental fact that our minds are malleable, that I can make a different choice. That's your freedom from fear. The key to salvation, as we're taught in the Course, is but this: I am doing this unto myself. Right? So it puts you at the level of cause instead of feeling like you're at the mercy of the effect. Okay? So, we also want to think about, if we feel that we're at the mercy of this world and other people's behaviors, then we feel dependent. We feel dependent upon the world and its conditions for our happiness. And all of us know that that is not how it works, right? The world is unpredictable, right? And why not? Because it's a projection of an idea thinking I separated from my source. It's chaos, right? And yes, there are peaceful moments for sure, but we do know what it's like to experience the ego's challenges. And so we don't want to be dependent on the world, where it's taught that you either build your house upon the sand or upon the rock. Well, the sand is the ego's agenda, right? It's not a good foundation. So now we're putting that aside. And now I'm building my house upon the rock, the truth and the steadiness of my oneness and source. And that's what we're being asked to do as course students. So I'm no longer dependent on the world for my happiness. I'm dependent on how I choose to think about it, right? And that's the beautiful thing. Your power is in how will I choose to think about this? And, we all know, I'm sure we pretty much all experienced where something used to bother us and now it doesn't bother us anymore. We experienced a miracle, a shift in our perception. So if we could do it with that, we can do it with all these other challenges. And, I also think it's important to highlight that it's important to be gentle with yourself. Some of your challenges are going to require a little more patience and compassion for yourself as you move through it. But that's okay. This is your classroom. So you want to allow yourself that time. Okay. But some challenges you're going to be like, whoa, no, true forgiveness. Let's rock this out. No, yeah, I'm good. Let's move on. But yourself. It's highly individualized. You follow your heart. And if you need help and you're not ready for forgiveness quite yet, you just simply say, Holy Spirit, help. Come on in and help me out. I do this with you. That's all, right? So it's becomes easier because you have a friend, someone who loves you. I always love to say and highlight that the Holy Spirit teaches through love. And so what is a beautiful thing to think of true forgiveness as is true forgiveness is a way of you extending God's love, right? Isn't that beautiful? That as a child of God, as love, I'm extending love through my true forgiveness. And if I'm not quite ready to do that, then at least I'm open to maybe getting there. And that's okay too, right? You follow your heart, but eventually you want to get to the point that true forgiveness is the path you want to walk. Okay. All right. So we want to acknowledge that this world being an illusion is a projection from our minds. It is an effect. I don't want to depend on it. It's about how I think about it. And I also want to point out the script. Each of us has our script. The script has been written as we're taught in the course. Our life's path is there. And so we just want to trust that we can walk with the Holy Spirit along that path. Right? And I think it's nice, like, if someone in your life who's going through a challenge, it's their journey. And so you're like, all I can do is love you on your journey. You can also do that for yourself. I'm on my journey. This is my journey. And so I'm going to love myself on this journey. You're loved too. So, you can tune into that as well. Okay. The fourth thing I want to mention is the power of your belief. You believe this world is real. I believe this world is real because we believe it is. Okay. The power of belief, as I like to say, is the breath of life for your thoughts. If you didn't believe it, it wouldn't bother you. And the same goes for the ego. We're taught in the course that if you didn't believe in the ego, it simply wouldn't bother you. And when we first learned that, I don't know about you, but you're like, oh, that's simple, hey? And you just go, well, I don't believe the ego. I think it's important to respect that we have an unconscious mind with all of this ego content that we're not aware of, right? And so that ego content is fueling our current daily life experience. And that belief in the ego is deeply seated in the unconscious mind. But what I also think is equally important to remember is that although the ego is in the unconscious mind, the Holy Spirit's also there. So there's the antidote to the ego, meeting it right there. And so the Holy Spirit knows what to do. So you and I, working through our conscious daily life, we can choose for the Holy Spirit. We can do our part. Absolutely. But what's really cool is you kind of have to release and go, Holy Spirit, I know you're in the background. I know you're deep in the canyons of my unconscious mind. And when I let you in, you are doing your work to help me out at the unconscious level because I'm willing, because I asked you to, because I opened up to you. There's a beautiful section of the course just around Christmas time where we're asked to give the Holy Spirit everything that would hurt us. Don't hide anything from the Holy Spirit, right? So, you're only going to be aware of so much at a time. So, this particular issue, Holy Spirit, I invite you right on in, and I kind of envision the Holy Spirit coming in like with a flashlight, lighting up the dark corners of my mind, right? And so you can do that. But as you go along and as you progress with your true forgiveness work, you're going to become aware of more and more that you need to forgive. And so you can continue, if you're ready, to just let the Holy Spirit shine its light in. You don't have to do this alone. The reason why we felt fearful all this time is because we thought we were alone. We thought we had to do it alone. And in the preface of the course, it even says, you need help. You can't do this alone. Straight up. Okay, good. So I'm going to let the Holy Spirit come in and help me. So I think it's just important to respect that you have a level of belief in the ego and this world. And essentially through your true forgiveness work, that's just kind of being nipped away at. And so as you do your true forgiveness work, you actually start to not be affected by the world as much. You find yourself less reactionary, more peaceful. You also find yourself more certain that you're on the right track through true forgiveness. So you actually kind of start to miss it if you don't do it. Okay, so as the ego is undone in our mind, our belief in the ego will lessen. And you will start to experience yourself more as spirit and that you're just having this bodily experience. And you also start to recognize that this world, you're more able to observe it as opposed to give into it. So true forgiveness just kind of helps to create that space between you and what you used to invest in, right? Which is really, really cool way of seeing it. So you want to just recognize that everything you seem affected by is because you believe it can affect you, right? There's a beautiful quote in the course that speaks to essentially that God is always certain, always true, right? And your belief will come back to that. And all of your work in the meantime is just to truly forgive the things that kind of block your awareness of your belief in God, in your oneness and your source. So it's a kind of gentle way of looking at things. Okay, now moving on to the atonement principle. There's kind of like a miracle equation that we're given in the course. And it is the atonement is the principle, the miracle are the means, healing is a result. So if you want healing of your mind, you have to recognize that it is a result of you doing the true forgiveness work, of you doing the right-mindedness work. Healing is a result. It's no different than taking an antibiotic. There's a result to something that you did. Okay. And so the atonement is at the core of true forgiveness. And what the atonement is this: the separation from God never occurred. So I like to say, the course teaches us that we have one problem. I think I left God. And there's one solution. I never left God. And so that one problem shows up in a multitude of ways, right? sickness, depression, anxiety, conflict, blah, 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 all that ego stuff. It's underneath that umbrella of, I think I left God. And so that is a false idea. It's not a true idea. It's a mistaken idea. We're taught in the course that fear actually has no basis or foundation, because fear is under that shaky foundation of you think you left God, but you didn't. And I think it's important to share here the other course teaching that it's just a tiny infinitesimal part of your mind that is having this physical experience. Like, can you believe that? It's just a tiny part of your mind that's having it. A tiny part of your mind fell asleep. There's a massive part of your mind that knows where you really are and who you really are. And I find that also very comforting, that, okay, just this tiny part of my mind thinks there's a problem, thinks I'm separated from God. So now, how do I wake up that one part of the mind? With the one solution, the atonement. So it's just the atonement principle. I never left God. So I always like to say, thinking I left God is the mistaken idea. And this, the atonement, is a true idea. Because God is true. Our source is true. You are true. Who you really are is true because you're one in God. So that's essentially what we're doing here. And so if you never separated from your source, then you have nothing to feel guilty about. There is no foundation to your fear or guilt. And so I'm safe to let it go through true forgiveness. I'm safe to let it go, right? Psychologically, you may feel more attached to some of your issues, the things that you perceive are your problems. That's fair. But ultimately, you will get to that point that I can start to let this go because you want to. Right? We all know that Jesus talks a lot about willingness in the course. Tune into your willingness, right? Are you ready? There's something that I mentioned in one of my moment of alignments just a couple of weeks ago, right? Where I talked about the foundation of healing is wanting to let your ego story go, right? If you want to hold on to that ego story, if part of you is psychologically still attached to it and invested in it, you're not quite ready at the point that you're fully ready to apply true forgiveness, but you want to let yourself get there, right? You want to allow yourself that process. But healing and willingness will come when you are ready to let the story go, right? Which is really beautiful. So as a personal example, which I shared in that moment of alignment, is, with the Meniere's disease, I was ready to let that go. I didn't even know what the hell was going on. I wanted to let it go. Same with PTSD. I wanted to let that go. Boom, there you go. But then what was highlighted was the relationship with my mother, the issues in our relationship. I was not quite ready to let that go. I had a lot of processing to do. I had to understand what was happening because I was really confused and muddled. And so I needed clarity on what I had experienced and what I was experiencing so I could move forward, and I did still do my true forgiveness work around my reactions, because I know that's important, but I was still working through a lot. But now I'm at the point where, with the relationship with my mom, where things are so much better and true forgiveness is so much easier and it just rolls off. So I'm just ready to do it. But it was a process. So that's just a personal example of tuning in when you're ready and maybe you need a little bit more time, but just be gentle with yourself. Just be open. Okay, so we're taught in, I think it's miracle principle number 26, but don't quote me. But we're taught that atoning means undoing. And so what's important to remember is that the ego is a mistaken idea that just simply needs to be undone. I don't need to attack it, because if you attack the ego, you're making it real, right? I don't need to justify the ego, because if I justify it, I'm making it real. Right? So I want to just recognize that the ego just needs to be undone. And so when I do my true forgiveness work, sometimes I just envision it being dissolved, the ego content, in the white light of the Holy Spirit. It's just being dissolved. It's just being corrected. Nothing more, nothing less. The fear dissolves. It's being corrected. That's what the Holy Spirit does. Okay. So I think that's really important to highlight because, you know, sometimes you hear people go, oh, my ego's working hard today. And it's like, ew. That is not a healthy statement because you just made the ego real. And not only that, you put yourself at the effect of the ego. So you want to recognize that when you're truly forgiving, I already talked about going above the battleground, that when you're doing true forgiveness, you're going above that temptation to see the ego as real. You feel it, you know it, but you're ready to move beyond it, right? So that's what we're doing. So atoning is undoing. And I also like to highlight that with the atonement, you're essentially, there's that one problem. I think I left God. And you're replacing it with the truth. I never left God in your mind. The Holy Spirit does that for you through your willingness and through your true forgiveness. But that's what's being done. You're doing a switcheroo. Okay. And as you let your ego investment go, the Holy Spirit judges it as false and it is released. I think it's important to remember that we don't need to know the inner workings of how the Holy Spirit functions. I think that's beyond our scope. And it's even mentioned a few times in the miracle principles that, you know, dimensions of time are being healed, right? Dimensions of time are being healed when you apply true forgiveness. And so we don't know that stuff. We're just kind of having this conscious mind experience, right? So there's a lot of trust that we're developing as we do true forgiveness. And if you're a subscriber of mine, you know I always say pay attention to your dreams. They can give a lot of insight as to what you need to forgive, but also what's healed. And we have a bit of time, so I'm going to share just a really quick, cool story that I had of an experience in November. And I was in a state of dreaming where I was almost awake, but I was still partly asleep. And in the dream, this gentleman walked into my bedroom, and he was seemed to be like some sort of elder. He seemed very, very wise. He had a white beard and piercing blue eyes. And in the dream, he came to me and he put a device over my eyes and into my ear. And it just started exuding a vibration and a light. And it kind of got uncomfortable, but I had this inner knowingness to just sit with it and to trust. And it lasted maybe a minute. And he took it off once it all stopped. And he looked at me with his big, beautiful blue eyes. And he just said, healed. Right? I don't know what was healed. So what this example is speaking to the unconscious mind. I don't know what was healed, but something was healed. And I just had to trust that. But I was given this beautiful, quick experience in a dream where, you know, I had this healing experience. And so, you know, I do daily true forgiveness work. So it was a lovely nudge on my path. And so that is just a quick example of we don't really know what's going on. I have no idea what healed. Like I told my mom, she's like, what healed? I'm like, no idea. A part of my mind. All right. So moving on. Well, so the Holy Spirit's going to give you those votes of confidence that you're on the right path. So you can trust that, right? So the next, I'm just going to mention two more points through the foundations of true forgiveness, and then we're going to get through the guided true forgiveness process. Okay. The next thing that is important to mention that's foundational to true forgiveness is the idea of mistake versus sin. Right? So in our world, there's a lot of amplification of guilt. The idea that we sinned, the idea that other people are sinners, right? And sin is directly correlated with guilt. And so if you're familiar with the cycle of fear that I've shared before, it's kind of a diagram where you have this fear guilt thought, you take it real, like as real, you take it seriously, you feel the effects, and then you judge it as real, and it just kind of keeps continuing, right? And when we have this idea of sin, what's happening in the mind is that sin calls for punishment. So you have guilt, you have sin, and then sin must be punished. And what it does is it just keeps you in that cycle, right? And it keeps you just invested in the ego, because punishment is a fear-based thing, right? And, in the Course, Jesus says, when you get angry with someone, it's an attempt to make them feel guilty, right? So the idea of sin is just riddled with guilt. And so what we're being asked to do is to replace that idea of sin with, I made a mistake. Mistakes can be corrected. Okay, so where sin calls for punishment, mistakes can be corrected. And so when I recognize I made a mistake, which is going to be coming up when we do the true forgiveness process, when I recognize I made a mistake, then I can open it up for correction. And how beautiful is that? So, the popular Course teaching, miracles are natural. There's also a quote, healing is natural. Healing is natural because mistakes can be corrected. That's why. Because you made a mistake. And you're still God's innocent, loving child. And so you can forgive yourself for that mistaken perception. And that's what we're doing with true forgiveness. People are always like, what am I forgiving? You are forgiving yourself for taking the ego seriously. That's what you're doing. If an anxious thought seems to bother you, you took the ego seriously. If you're angry at someone, you took the ego seriously. All of it's the same. No matter what it appears to look like, I took the ego seriously. Now let's bring this all the way back to the tiny mad idea where I think I left God. And Jesus is like, that was not a problem that came into your mind. The issue was you took it seriously. And since that moment, you have been continuously taking ego thoughts seriously. And that is the issue that needs to be corrected through true forgiveness. So that's what you're forgiving always and forever. I made a mistake by taking the ego seriously. And that's what I need to forgive myself for. Because when we look at that, oh, I've taken the ego seriously, right? What am I saying? I'm saying that I'm more powerful than God. That's not true. The power of life and love and creativity that you are is because of God. Hi, Gilda.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
All good. And so what you're recognizing is that it is always because you put the ego before God. That is what you're correcting. I took it seriously. That was my mistake. And so I'm putting God, cause, right back in its rightful place in my mind. That the ego only affected me because I believed it. But it's not true. It doesn't come before God. Oh, God is. God is, and we cease to speak. Love is, we cease to speak. So that's what we're doing. Okay, with true forgiveness. And I always love to point out that the law of forgiveness undoes the law of karma. Karma goes around and around and on it goes. The law of forgiveness hops you off that cycle. Healing is natural. Let's go home. Right? Okay, the final thing I want to mention before we get into our true forgiveness practice is the key to true forgiveness is this: sincerity. Sincerity. I am sincere that I want help. I'm sincere that I can't do this anymore. Right? So when I had that bout of anxiety a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, that is it. I am done. Something's got to change, and it begins with me. I got to approach this differently. I was very sincere about it. And, as we know, again, Jesus talking about willingness. I am willing to let this go. Man, I'm done with this story. I gotta let this shit go, right? And it's okay. That's great. So you wanna I always like to say you want to use your level of being fed up as like your kind of your fuel for true forgiveness, right? And it is in the paragraph, you're familiar before the page 90 exercise. I always love to read that paragraph, and I'll be doing it again today, that Jesus says, say this with sincerity. What I love to point out is that sometimes as course students, we can fall into that habit of like relying on the poetry of the course, like, I am not a body, I am free, for I am still as God created me, right? Some of the things just flow, but were we sincere when we said it, right? So you kind of want to take a step back and just, this is just an example because that's a really poetic phrase that you can just kind of let it roll off your tongue without meaning it, right? So you kind of go, yeah, you want to stop and be sincere. I am not this body. I am free. For I am still as God created me. And like, I'm just feeling sensations in my head just by saying it with sincerity instead of just letting it haphazardly roll off my tongue. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference there. So with true forgiveness, you want to sit down through tears, whatever it is, you want to sit down and go, I am done. Here's true forgiveness. I am ready to let this go. And that's your fuel. And it's really, really beautiful. It's really helpful. Okay. So we're going to get into our exercise. Just before I dig in, are there any questions or comments? No pressure. No, we're all good. Okay. Gilda?
Oh, I just was thinking just recently, it sunk in because I've been doing the course for a very long time. But forgiveness, as you said, takes us home. So for a long time, I didn't understand what atonement meant. So now I know that forgiveness and atonement really are synonymous.
Absolutely. Yeah, I chatted about it before you hopped on.
Okay.
Yes, that the atonement is the essence of true forgiveness.
Mhm.
Right-mindedness itself, at the center of it is the atonement. I
Mhm.
never left God. So
Mhm.
that's why I practice true denial, that the
Mhm.
ego can't affect me.
Mhm.
That's why I don't judge, because
Mhm.
this isn't real,
Mhm.
right? And this is why I apply true forgiveness, is because I never actually left God, the atonement. So it's that one solution. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed it. I just saw your email. Thank
Oh,
you.
don't be sorry, love. No, I'm happy you brought it up because it's such an important point.
It
And
is.
we need this repetition, right?
Mhm.
We need these reminders. So no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
all of this seems very real, what I'm experiencing, but I'm knowing now that it's not. It seems very real.
Yeah, it does. And we want to, and that's where, you want to let the Holy Spirit, okay, here's ego Fiona thinking this is real. There's the effects. I'm feeling the physical sensations, all of it. That's where I'm bringing in the Holy Spirit. You do this for me. Please take it from me and judge it for me. I don't know how to do it, right? Yeah. So that we're exercising our fundamental choice in this world. I can choose either for the ego or for the Holy Spirit. Those are my only two choices. I know what the ego brings. We all have a PhD in the ego. So now we're bringing in the Holy Spirit. We're creating that habit. And I think it's so beautiful to give yourself that patience and that grace as you start to create that habit, right? Because eons we've been thinking with the ego. So it's going to take, a bit of time, but that's what time is for, right? We're taught in the course that our purpose here is to forgive. The purpose of time is to forgive. That's why you're here. So, you can kind of like just, well, here's me enjoying life. And oh, something's come up for forgiveness, forgive. And you just kind of let it roll. Yeah, thank you, Gilda, for bringing that up.
It's
That
one more
was,
thing. And I know you've mentioned this yourself too,
yeah,
that forgiveness doesn't mean that we still stay in a toxic relationship.
not at all. Oh my goodness. No, 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 no.
Mhm.
Um, because, as someone who has experienced that,
Mhm.
when you're in that toxic relationship, I know I actually mentioned this in a chat I did with Cindy Renard, where we were talking about relationships. And it's almost like one of those inflatable clowns that you
Mm-hmm.
punch and then it comes back up and you punch it. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you're in that toxic environment, we have to respect that we have a level of awareness right now where maybe we're still developing in right-mindedness. Maybe we're
Mm-hmm.
not as far, where we could easily shrug something like that off
Mm-hmm.
consistently. We have to respect where we're at. And so if you're in a toxic relationship, I don't know about you, but I constantly felt like I was battling and then
Mm-hmm.
recovering. And like even you know what? This is true too. I actually found myself, well, I'm trying to do right-mindedness. And I'm also at the same time trying to set up boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
healthy, loving boundaries to say, hey, can I just have some space to recover? I'll catch you when I
Mm-hmm.
feel better, right? No, no judgment,
Yeah.
Um, I found myself constantly having to do that. And it just felt like it was distracting me from really getting to a point that I really wanted to do true forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
because I felt validated in the pain I was feeling. Here you
Mm-hmm.
go again. You're attacking me again. That's at least how I was experiencing it.
For me too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like I need some space. Not to, judge you and say you're bad or awful. I just
Mm-hmm.
need space to get some clarity.
Mm-hmm.
I need to calm my nervous system down. I need to just take some space to breathe
Mm-hmm.
so I can feel better and really do my true forgiveness work with sincerity. Because right now, I just feel like I'm constantly in this battle,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'm constantly recovering.
Right. I love that. Just
Yeah.
taking space for ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and I respect that other people could see that, like who you're trying to take space from. I deeply respect that they would personalize that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not about necessarily always about that. You
Mm-hmm.
may not agree with their behavior. You can have compassion, and go,
Mm-hmm.
okay. But you also have to see the truth in them and go, you know what? You're not that body.
Mm-hmm.
You're not your pain. I'm not this and the pain. But I need some space to remember that you're spirit and I'm spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I need a little help.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm doing here. And if you personalize it, that's not, that's definitely not how I intend it, but I got to do this.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course. Yeah, I got your back. And if you want to email me and I'm happy to help you out on that for sure.
Thank you.
Of
Thanks.
course, of course. Okay, so I'm going to get into the true forgiveness process, which is at the very end of chapter 5 in the text on page 90. And as usual, you're very welcome to close your eyes and get cozy um, and just hear my voice. I encourage you to maybe have something in your mind that you do want to apply true forgiveness to. Of course, I'm just reading these words. You can say them to yourself, of course, but let's shine some light maybe on something. Okay, so I'm going to read the paragraph before the true forgiveness process. You just sit back and relax. Decision cannot be difficult. This is obvious if you realize that you must already have decided not to be wholly joyous, if that is how you feel. So I've taken the ego seriously. I see that. Therefore, the first step in the undoing is to recognize that you actively decided wrongly. I took the ego seriously, my mistake. But can as actively decide otherwise. I have a choice. I can choose for the Holy Spirit. Be very firm with yourself in this and keep yourself fully aware that the undoing process, which does not come from you, is nevertheless within you because God placed it there. So that answer is from God's love, comes through the Holy Spirit. Your part is merely to return your thinking to the point at which the error was made. I mistakenly took the ego seriously. I think I'm separate from God. That's the error. And you give it over to the atonement. I never left God in peace. In that one sentence, we have the one problem and the one solution. Say this to yourself as sincerely as you can, remembering that the Holy Spirit will respond fully to your slightest invitation. Here we go. I must have decided wrongly because I am not at peace. I made the decision myself, but I can also decide otherwise. I want to decide otherwise because I want to be at peace. I do not feel guilty. The Holy Spirit will undo all the consequences of my wrong decision if I will let him. I choose to let him by allowing him to decide for God, for me. Just envision the Holy Spirit's white light going fully into what you're forgiving, fully into the deep canyons of your unconscious mind. It is important to remember that all of your challenges came up for healing. They have no other purpose. And so healing is what I will use this for. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and return. And so I just want to point out just the true forgiveness process in the exercise itself. I must have decided wrongly because I'm not at peace. Okay? So I'm not blaming. I'm not dependent on the world. I was the one who made the mistake in my thinking, right? So I'm putting myself at the level of cause. I'm not coming from effect anymore. I'm at cause. Again, here, more cause. I made the decision myself. It was my mistake, my mistake. I'm not blaming anyone or anything. It was my mistake. But I can also decide otherwise. There's that choice. I want to decide otherwise. Oh man, do I want to decide otherwise? Because I want to be at peace. Okay? I want to decide otherwise because I want to be at peace. I do not feel guilty. Now, it's important to remember you don't want that guilt sneaking in the back door of your mind again. You don't have to feel guilty about making a mistake. That's just more ego. It's okay. This is your classroom. So I don't feel guilty because the Holy Spirit will undo all the consequences of my wrong decision if I will let him. Sounds good to me. Come on in, right? I choose to let him by allowing him to decide for God, for me. That's the atonement. Decide for God, for me. The truth for me, right? And so as you move forward, the seemingly harder challenges, the seemingly easier ones, you take that big step back and you go, there's that one problem. At the root of it, I think I left God. But there's my solution. I never left God. And one of the most beautiful lessons in A Course in Miracles, my absolute favorite, truth will correct all errors in my mind. The truth is the atonement. I never left God. One thing before we finish, it's something that I want to highlight because I'm really excited about it and I'm putting it in my book. If you looked at the wall over here, it's all my book pasted up there. I'm working on it, really hard on it. And it all comes down to a matter of identity. I think separation is real, and I'm upholding that by continuing to misidentify as the ego. Okay, so we want to remember that who we truly are, our true identity. This is why I forgive. I'm bringing it in because I am spirit, whole and innocent. All is forgiven and released, right? I'm letting that ego story go. Okay. Was this helpful? Yeah? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me.